Tel Aviv, 1962. A sterile, windowless room, thick with a silence that feels like a physical weight. On one side of the table sit two agents of the Mossad, men who grew up in the shadow of the Holocaust, men whose families were turned to ash in the ovens of Poland. On the other side sits a giant. He stands 6'4", an imposing tower of muscle and bone. But it's his face that commands the room. A deep, jagged scar runs from his left ear to his chin, a permanent lightning bolt of flesh that tells a story of violence before he even speaks a word. This is Otto Skorzeny. During World War II, he was Adolf Hitler's favorite commando. The Allies dubbed him the most dangerous man in Europe. He was an SS Obersturmbannführer, a man who led the most daring special operations of the Third Reich, a man who once carried out the unthinkable to save a failing dictator. To the Jewish people, he is a ghost of the Reich that refused to stay buried. He is the embodiment of the monster they swore to hunt to the ends of the earth. Yet, here they are. There are no handcuffs. There is no trial. Instead, in the flickering light of the Cold War, an impossible deal is being struck. The most notorious Nazi commando in the world is about to become a hitman for the State of Israel. It is the ultimate paradox, a betrayal of history, a move so cold-blooded and pragmatic it feels like a sin against the memory of millions. But how did we get here? How did a man who swore a blood oath to the swastika end up pulling triggers for the Star of David? Why would Israel's elite spy agency hire the very monster they were supposed to execute? What secret did Skorzeny possess that was worth more than justice itself? The answer lies in a world of shifting shadows, where yesterday's executioner becomes today's most valuable asset. It is a story of survival, of ego, and a secret handshake that defied the moral boundaries of the 20th century. Before this meeting ends, Otto Skorzeny will agree to kill for the people he once tried to exterminate. But to understand the hitman, we must first understand the man who engineered his own legend. We have to go back to Vienna, to a time when blood and honor were measured by the inch of a blade. What does it take to become the most dangerous man on a continent? And how do you earn a scar that becomes a symbol of terror? The journey into the heart of the scarred paradox begins now. To look at Otto Skorzeny is to see the Schmiss. It's the jagged trophy on his left cheek that earned him the international nickname Scarface. But this wasn't a souvenir from a Russian bayonet or Allied shrapnel. It was a badge of honor earned in the blood-soaked student fencing societies of Vienna. Born in 1908, Otto was raised in a world of rigid discipline and lack. His father famously believed that doing without was good for the soul, a philosophy so extreme that Otto didn't even taste butter until he was 15 years old. This hardened upbringing created a man who viewed the world not through emotion, but through the cold eyes of an engineer. At the Technical University of Vienna, he found the Menser ritualized duels that were less about sport and more about tests of character. You stood your ground, you didn't flinch, and you took the blow. In 1928, during his 10th combat, a steel blade sliced his cheek open. Stoic to the point of madness, Skorzeny insisted the wound be stitched without anesthetics, a gesture that solidified his reputation for unnatural grit. That scar became his calling card. It signaled to the rising tide of Austrian Nazis that here was a man who embraced violence as a virtue. By 1931, he had joined the Nazi Party. During the 1938 Anschluss, the chaotic annexation of Austria, Skorzeny claimed he personally intervened to stop a radical squad from executing the Austrian president, an early sign that he understood the strategic value of high-profile prisoners. When World War II finally erupted, Otto was a 6'4" tower of muscle. Denied from the Luftwaffe for being too tall and too old at 31, he forced his way into the elite Leibstandarte Hitler's personal bodyguard regiment. He had the height, the scar, and the fanatical devotion. But guarding doors wasn't enough for a man with an engineer's mind for destruction. He was looking for a new kind of war. How does a bodyguard become a mastermind of sabotage? And what happens when a mechanical engineer starts treating human lives like gears in a machine? The answer was waiting in the frozen hell of the Eastern Front, where the legend of the scarred commando would be forged in fire. July 1943. The 1,000-year Reich is beginning to crack. In Rome, the unthinkable happens. Benito Mussolini, the Deuce and Hitler's closest ally, is arrested by his own king and whisked away to a secret prison. Hitler is livid. He needs his puppet back, not just for politics, but for his own ego. He summons his top special forces commanders to the Wolf's Lair. Among the seasoned veterans stands the tall Austrian with the lightning bolt scar. When Hitler asks how they would find Mussolini, the others offer caution. Skorzeny offers a guarantee. For 2 months, Skorzeny plays a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek across Italy. He intercepts radio signals, bribes officials, and even survives a plane crash while scouting. Finally, he finds the target, the Campo Imperatore Hotel, a fortress perched 6,000 feet up in the Gran Sasso Mountains. It's accessible only by a single cable car, and it's guarded by 200 elite Italian police. To the Allied High Command, it's a cage no one can open. To Otto Skorzeny, it's an engineering problem. The 12th of September, 1943. High noon. The sound of whistling wind is the only warning the guards receive before 12 DFS 230 gliders plummet from the sky. They don't land. They crash land on a tiny rock-strewn patch of grass right in front of the hotel. Skorzeny is in the first glider. He leaps from the wreckage, his submachine gun ready, screaming at the Italians not to fire. It's a masterclass in psychological warfare. Along for the ride is an Italian general, forced into the glider by Skorzeny to order the guards to stand down. Within minutes, the hotel is taken without a single shot being fired. Mussolini, confused and disheveled, is escorted out. "I knew my friend Adolf Hitler would not leave me in the lurch," he reportedly says. But as the rescue ends, the myth-making begins. A tiny Storch aircraft lands to take Mussolini away. It's only built for 2 people. But Skorzeny, weighing well over 200 pounds and standing 6'4", insists on squeezing in. He knows that if he isn't in that plane, he isn't in the history books. The pilot screams that the plane is too heavy, that they'll never clear the cliff. Skorzeny doesn't care. The plane lurches off the mountain, dipping dangerously toward the valley floor before catching the air. By the time Mussolini reaches Vienna, the world knows only one name: Otto Skorzeny. He had pushed the actual paratroopers, the men who did the real heavy lifting out of the camera's frame. He became the face of the daring raid, the Nazi superstar. But was this a stroke of military genius, or the greatest PR stunt of the 20th century? As the Knight's Cross is pinned to his chest, the most dangerous man in Europe realizes that in war, perception is just as lethal as a bullet, and his next mission would prove that he could kidnap more than just a dictator. He could kidnap the soul of an entire nation. October 1944. Budapest. The city of bridges is on the edge of a betrayal that could shatter the German Eastern Front. Admiral Miklos Horthy, the regent of Hungary, is finished with the swastika. Behind closed doors, he is secretly negotiating a surrender to the Soviet Union. If Hungary flips, the German army in the Balkans will be cut off and annihilated. Hitler cannot let Hungary fall. He sends for his troubleshooter. The man with the scar is tasked to kidnap a kingdom. But Skorzeny doesn't target the regent first. He goes for his heart. In a move that reads like a pulp spy novel, Skorzeny and his commandos infiltrate a meeting where the regent's son, Miklos Horthy Jr., is speaking with intermediaries. In broad daylight, in the bustling heart of Budapest, Skorzeny's team strikes. They don't just seize the prince. They roll him into a heavy wool rug, hoist him onto a truck like a discarded piece of furniture, and speed toward the airport. It is a masterpiece of clinical audacity. By the time Admiral Horthy realizes his son is missing, the prince is already on a plane to Germany as a high-value hostage. Skorzeny then turns his focus to the royal palace on Castle Hill. He doesn't wait for a slow, bloody siege. Instead, he leads a column of tanks and elite troops in a daring bluff, charging straight up the hill. He gives Horthy a brutal choice: abdicate the throne, or your son dies. In less than 24 hours, The Hungarian government collapses. Horthy steps down. A fanatical pro-Nazi regime takes over, and Skorzeny has secured Hitler's southern flank using little more than a carpet and cold-blooded nerve. This wasn't the slow grind of infantry. It was the dawn of modern special operations, surgical, rapid, and psychologically crushing. Otto Skorzeny is no longer just a commando. He is a kingmaker. But as the Reich continues its inevitable slide into the abyss, Hitler has one final desperate request for his favorite giant. It is a mission of such profound deception that it would force the entire Allied High Command to hide behind locked doors. How do you sow chaos in an army that has already won? You stop playing by the rules of war. You stop wearing your own uniform. December 1944. The Ardennes forest is a graveyard of frozen pine and white fog. The Allies believe the German army is broken, a dying beast retreating to its lair. They are wrong. Hitler is preparing one final massive gamble, the Battle of the Bulge, and at the center of this storm is Otto Skorzeny. His mission, codenamed Operation Greif, is so audacious it borders on the suicidal. He is to lead a Trojan Horse brigade, German soldiers dressed in captured American uniforms, driving captured American jeeps, and speaking American slang. Their objective? To slip through the front lines in the chaos of the opening assault, seize vital bridges over the Meuse River, and sow absolute terror in the Allied rear. Skorzeny handpicks men who can pass for GIs. He gives them Mickey Mouse comics to read, and teaches them how to chew gum like a boy from Brooklyn. On December 16, as the German artillery opens hell, Skorzeny's Americans vanish into the fog. They don't have to win battles, they just have to create doubt. They change road signs, cut telephone wires, and spread rumors of poisoned wells. But then, a single lie spirals out of control. One of Skorzeny's captured commandos, under interrogation, bluffs his captors. He tells the Americans that the scarred giant himself is leading a hit squad to Paris to assassinate General Dwight D. Eisenhower. The effect is instantaneous and paralyzing. The Allied High Command goes into lockdown. Eisenhower is confined to his headquarters, protected by a small army. Security checkpoints spring up at every crossroads. American generals are forced to prove their identity by answering questions about baseball and movie stars. Ironically, Skorzeny's small team of a few dozen men has managed to kidnap the entire Allied leadership without even being in the same city. It is during this chaos that the British press first prints the name, the most dangerous man in Europe. Skorzeny has become a bogeyman, a phantom that haunts every dark corner of the front. Even as the German offensive collapses, his legend only grows. But as the war reaches its bloody finale, the most dangerous man faces a choice. Does he die in a bunker for a lost cause? Or does he start planning for a world where the swastika no longer flies? The Reich is falling, but Otto Skorzeny is just getting started. He has survived the gliders, the kidnappings, and the Ardennes. But can he survive the peace? And more importantly, how does a man with a lightning bolt scar vanish into thin air when the entire world is looking for him? The most dangerous man is about to attempt his most difficult escape, yet not from a prison, but from justice itself. May 1945. The Thousand-Year Reich lies in smoldering ruins. Across a broken Germany, the most powerful men in Hitler's inner circle are being hunted like wolves. Otto Skorzeny, the man who once rescued dictators from mountaintops, realizes there is no one left to rescue him. He surrenders to American forces, expecting a swift execution or a one-way trip to a gallows in Nuremberg. Instead, he finds himself at the center of a legal drama that would expose the uncomfortable hypocrisies of war. In 1947, during the Dachau trials, Skorzeny is charged with war crimes for his Trojan Horse operation in the Ardennes. The prosecution argues that wearing American uniforms to sow chaos is a violation of the laws of war. Skorzeny's neck is on the line. But then, a surprise witness steps forward. Wing Commander Yo Thomas, a legendary British secret agent known as the White Rabbit. He tells the court a truth the Allies didn't want heard, that British commandos had worn German uniforms to conduct their own raids behind enemy lines. In an instant, the moral high ground vanishes. The case collapses. The most dangerous man in Europe is acquitted. But Skorzeny isn't truly free. While waiting for a denazification tribunal in 1948, he decides he's had enough of prison walls. On a quiet July day, a U.S. military jeep rolls up to the Darmstadt internment camp. 3 men in American MP uniforms present papers to take Skorzeny to a hearing. He climbs in without a word. The jeep drives out the front gate and vanishes into history. The MPs weren't Americans. They were former SS officers in stolen gear. Skorzeny had staged his own rescue. For the next few years, the scarred giant is a ghost, drifting through France and Germany before finding permanent sanctuary in Francisco Franco's Spain. But he isn't hiding in a dark basement. He is living like a king in Madrid, running a successful engineering business and mingling with high society. The world thinks he is a relic of a dead regime, a monster with no teeth left. They are wrong. In the shadows of the emerging Cold War, a new market is opening for men with Skorzeny's unique technical skills. Dictators and revolutionaries are looking for teachers to build their armies, and soon, the man who served Hitler will find himself training the future leaders of the Middle East. But as he builds an army in the desert, he doesn't realize that a new enemy is watching his every move, an enemy that doesn't believe in acquittals and never forgets a face. How did a Nazi commando end up in the middle of an Arab-Israeli arms race? And what happens when the Mossad decides that the only way to stop a monster is to hire him? Cairo, 1953. The air is thick with the scent of spice, diesel, and revolution. In the hushed hallways of Egyptian power, a new regime led by Gamal Abdel Nasser is looking for a way to crush its enemies. They don't just want soldiers. They want masters of irregular warfare. They need someone who understands sabotage, terror, and the psychology of the underdog. They reach out to a man living in the Spanish sun. Otto Johann Anton Skorzeny arrives in Egypt not as a fugitive, but as a prestigious military advisor. He isn't alone. He brings a shadow staff of former SS and Wehrmacht officers, men who had no place in the new West German army, but were desperate for a fight. Skorzeny isn't just teaching drills. He's designing the blueprint for modern insurgency. He organizes the Egyptian army and recruits Arab volunteers for specialized commando training. Among his trainees is a young, charismatic Palestinian volunteer. His name? Yasser Arafat. Skorzeny is teaching him the very tactics that would later define decades of Middle Eastern conflict: hit-and-run raids, deep cover sabotage, and the art of the guerrilla. For the Israelis, watching from across the border, this is a nightmare come to life. Their old executioner is now sharpening the blades of their new enemies. The man who once rescued Mussolini is now teaching a new generation how to destroy the Jewish state. But the threat goes deeper than infantry. Skorzeny isn't the only German in Cairo. Deep in the desert, at a secret facility known as Factory 333, a group of former Nazi scientists, the men who built the V-2 rockets that terrorized London, are now building a missile program for Nasser. Their goal is simple and terrifying: to create a weapon that can rain destruction down on Tel Aviv from hundreds of miles away. The Mossad is in a state of pure panic. They see the ghosts of the Third Reich rising again in the sand, this time led by the most dangerous man in Europe. The stakes have never been higher. If these rockets are completed, Israel could face a second annihilation. They have to act. They have to stop the scientists. The logical choice is to eliminate the source. Kill the German scientists. Kill the man protecting them. Send a hit squad to Madrid or Cairo and end the Skorzeny legend once and for all. But then, a brilliant, terrifyingly pragmatic idea emerges from the shadows of Tel Aviv. What if the monster didn't have to die? What if the man who served Hitler could be convinced to serve Israel? It was an unthinkable alliance. But in the world of high-stakes espionage, the unthinkable is often the only way to survive. Madrid, early 1962. A quiet evening in a local bar, the air thick with the scent of tobacco and Rioja wine. Otto Skorzeny sits alone, his massive frame hunched over a drink, the jagged scar on his cheek catching the dim light. Two people approach his table, a man and a woman. They look like a wealthy German couple on vacation, but Skorzeny, a man who has spent his life in the crosshairs, notices the way they scan the exits. He notices the tension in the man's shoulders. "I know who you are," Skorzeny says, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that cuts through the ambient noise. "And I know why you are here. You are from the Mossad, and you have come to kill me." The man across from him is Josef Ronen, a Mossad officer who lost his entire family to the SS. His hand is in his pocket, finger resting on the trigger of a concealed pistol. Beside him is a female agent, posing as his wife. They have been sent to Madrid with a desperate, controversial directive. If you cannot eliminate the threat in Egypt, you must turn the man who protects it. Ronen stares into the eyes of the monster. For a long, suffocating moment, the fate of the most dangerous man in Europe hangs in the balance. Then, Ronen slowly removes his hand from his pocket. "If we wanted to kill you, Skorzeny, you would have been dead weeks ago," he bluffs. "We didn't come for your life. We came for your expertise." The proposal is staggering. Israel is facing an existential crisis. The German rocket scientists in Cairo are close to perfecting a guidance system that could wipe Tel Aviv off the map. Mossad needs an insider, someone the scientists trust, someone who can bypass Egyptian intelligence. They need a man who speaks the language of the old Reich. Skorzeny considers the offer. He doesn't ask for money. His engineering business is thriving. He asks for something far more valuable. "I want my name removed from Simon Wiesenthal's list of Nazi war criminals," he demands. "I want the hunt to end. I want to walk the world as a free man." It is a pact with the devil. Ronen cannot control Wiesenthal, but the Mossad agrees to protect Skorzeny from their own hit squads. In that smoke-filled bar, history's most paradoxical alliance is born. The scarred giant has just become a secret weapon for the Jewish state. But the Mossad doesn't just want information, they want results. And soon, Skorzeny will have to prove his loyalty by doing the one thing he does better than anyone else: eliminating a target. The first name on the list is a man Skorzeny knows well, a fellow German, a brilliant mind, and a marked man. The 11th of September, 1962, Munich. Heinz Krug is a man who knows too much and sleeps too little. As a key scientist for Nasser's rocket program, he has spent months looking over his shoulder, terrified of the Mossad's reach. He needs a protector, a legend, someone the Jewish assassins wouldn't dare touch. He reaches out to the hero of the old Reich, Otto Johann Anton Skorzeny. To Krug, Skorzeny is the ultimate insurance policy. To Skorzeny, Krug is merely a technical problem to be solved. They meet in Munich. Krug is relieved, almost giddy to be in the presence of the man who saved Mussolini. Skorzeny is polite, efficient, and cold. He tells Krug they need to drive to a safe house in the forest outside the city to discuss a long-term protection strategy. Krug climbs into the car without a single doubt. He is riding with the most famous commando in German history. He thinks he is finally safe. The car stops in a secluded patch of the Bavarian woods. The air is crisp, the silence absolute. 3 other men, Israeli agents, are already there, waiting in the shadows. Krug starts to feel a prickle of unease, but Skorzeny's presence calms him. Then, the giant turns. There is no trial. There is no long speech about betrayal. Skorzeny simply draws his pistol and fires. The most dangerous man in Europe pulls the trigger. Heinz Krug, the man who was supposed to build the wings for Egypt's fire, falls dead in the dirt of his own homeland. Skorzeny watches the light leave Krug's eyes with the same engineering detachment he used to calculate glider weights at Gran Sasso. The Mossad agents watch in stunned silence. They are seeing a master at work, a man killing his own countrymen to satisfy a deal with his former enemies. Krug's body is buried in a hole pre-dug by the agents, covered in lime to accelerate decay. The message to the other scientists in Cairo is sent without a single word being typed. No one is safe, not even with Skorzeny. The Egyptian missile program begins to crumble from within. paralyzed by a fear that their greatest protector is actually their executioner. But as the smoke clears in the Bavarian forest, one question remains. What happens to a man who has betrayed everything he once stood for? Does he find peace in the Spanish sun? Or do the ghosts of his past finally catch up to him? The final chapter of the Scarred Paradox is about to close. The 5th of July, 1975. Madrid, Spain. The giant has finally fallen, not to an assassin's bullet or a glider crash, but to the slow, relentless advance of spinal cancer. Otto Skorzeny dies at the age of 67, surrounded by the comforts of a wealthy life that few of his contemporaries in the SS ever enjoyed. But even in death, the Scarred Paradox refuses to be simple. He leaves behind a legacy that is a jagged mosaic of blood, betrayal, and dark brilliance. He has 2 funerals. The first, in a chapel in Madrid, is a haunting echo of a dead era. Hard-faced men in their 60s and 70s, former officers of the Third Reich, stand stiffly to pay their respects. They raise their arms in the forbidden Nazi salute, singing Horst Wessel Lied over the casket of their Scarface hero. To them, he remained the unconquered commando of the Reich. The second ceremony takes place in Vienna, where his cremated remains are brought to the family plot. It is a smaller, quieter affair, but in the shadows of the cemetery, standing behind distant tombstones, there are other men. They don't wear medals, and they don't salute. They are agents of the Mossad. They are here to ensure that their most controversial asset is truly gone. They watch the burial of the man who saved Mussolini, who trained Arafat, and who killed for Israel, all while never once renouncing his Nazi ideology. Who was Otto Skorzeny? Was he a fanatical monster who simply found a way to survive the peace? Or was he the ultimate engineer, a man who viewed morality as just another technical constraint to be bypassed? To history, he remains an enigma, the Nazi hitman for the Jewish state, a man who lived 1,000 lives in the shadows of the 20th century's greatest horrors. As the soil is leveled over his urn in Vienna, the secrets of his alliance with the Mossad remain buried deep. In the cold world of high-stakes intelligence, there are no permanent enemies and no permanent friends, only the mission. Otto Skorzeny proved that even the deepest scars can be hidden, but they never truly heal. The most dangerous man in Europe is gone, but the ghost of his lightning bolt scar still haunts the bridge between justice and survival.